sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now do change. Change.
Good afternoon and welcome to Spirit Cafe Show. I'm Barbara.
And I'm Cheryl.
And we love bringing wonderful, courageous conversations to you. And this week is spectacular, guaranteed. Cheryl.
Absolutely. This week we have the wonderful Dr. Reverend Martha Creek, who is beloved by so many. She is a New Thought spiritual teacher, mentor, speaker. Just there's not enough words to explain who she is. Martha has a book out called Pearls of Wisdom, and it was brought together by one of her beloved students who said, Martha, you should write a book. And Martha said, I'm not going to write a book. And she said, but you've got all these wonderful sayings. And Martha said, well, if you want to put them together and have a book, then you do so. And they did. And it's just so wonderful to have Martha here today. I'm not sure where she is, but there she comes.
There she is.
Hi, beloved. And I'm so excited to be able to see you again after being with you at the affiliated New Thought Network conference last week, which was just too wonderful for words. So welcome, Martha.
Thank you, Cheryl. And wait, I don't know where you want to start today, but that's a place to start. I mean, how excited I was to get that email from you late one night that said, because I was going to go, can't go, might go, can't go, ain't going to go. And then it's like the night before, I'm going. So I'll see you there.
Yeah.
That speaks to a level of courage, honey, and some level of integration of our parts. That we live in enough balance to say that a part that would say, no, it's ridiculous, it's too late, it's not practical, that part doesn't take the lead. And that part of you that was truer to your own goals, and what was for the well-being of all of your parts, could take the lead on that. So I'm very, very blessed and inspired by that. And to have any time with you personally is a gift to me.
Thank you, Martha.
Getting to see you both in June at that other conference was fantastic. Another gift too, to be at the same table with you anytime.
And we're together in person for the first time in a long time.
Yes, since June.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so that's also another blessing and gift today. And so that's what we're talking about today is no bad parts. And that's what you're referring to, Martha. So tell us a little bit more about what that means.
Well, it's a radical shift away from calling any part of us bad or a problem or wrong, and then shaming ourselves for having anxiety or fear or bewilderment. And just the last call I hung up from prior to coming onto your show here was somebody in a very intense feeling of overwhelm. And that seems to be the topic of the week. So we, on our call Monday night, in this group that I serve, the immersion group, that was part of that topic, and how we've tried to pretend that we're not overwhelmed, pretend our way out of it, or deny that we're overwhelmed because I'm far too professional to be overwhelmed, or I'm too old, or at least I don't have all that going on in my life that other people, at least I'm not in a war zone. At least I don't have a cancer diagnosis. At least, And it's like it's a non-empathetic, non-graced, non-compassionate way of treating ourselves. And the more we continue to treat ourselves like that, the more traumatized our parts get.
Mm-hmm.
And the more likely then we are to have more overwhelm, more anxiety, more fear, more apathy, more resignation,
More
more
guilt, more shame.
all of it, honey.
Yeah.
Everything that we have called wrong or bad, it's like throwing gas on a fire of that.
Yeah.
It's a radical new look at these parts of us that are very valid human parts,
Mm-hmm.
part of our human heartedness, part of our human learning processes, and absolutely making amends to them and some restitution with them, that I'm going to be in a very different relationship with you for the rest of our days.
Right.
And it's going to be an opposite patterning to what I've done so far
Right.
out of our own ignorance and our unawareness, or whatever you want to call it, that I had no idea that I was re-traumatizing my own self,
Mm-hmm.
and deepening then the wounds and the root system of the initial traumas.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the big key, is that we've been conditioned to believe we're bad and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so this changes that completely, which I really, really love, because when we stop judging ourselves in that way, we allow for the possibility of even hearing the inspiration that comes, right? The guidance that moves us, like with you going to Anton
Mm-hmm.
with a minute notice. It's
Mhm.
like, that's exactly what we need to be doing, is trusting that.
Mm-hmm.
Or me moving to Toronto to start a spiritual center with $40 and 2 suitcases and a one-way plane ticket. It's like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
they seem silly, but they're perfect.
Yeah.
Well, it's silly, and they were absolutely part of our well-being. And
Absolutely.
part of us, even though parts of us were at war, which is normal, like that's nonsensible, that's not practical, that's not the time. Don't go this way till you got $100,000 in the bank. Wait, it's like, so even while the parts are at war,
Mm-hmm.
it's allowing for some of that war, and then doing our best to keep our seat of consciousness occupied by the highest aspect of ourselves.
Right.
Not the traumatized, not the wounded, not because they're bad, but because they're going to lead from the trauma.
Yes.
Going to act from the traumas. They're not going to act from our well-being for the whole of us, or what our purpose is here in life. We cannot take the lead when our hurt parts are leading. And they're going to keep hurting until they're held.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about the parts, right? Because I've just picked up the book and I've just started reading it. So really, and really mean like a few pages. But in the book, what the first thing that I'm reading about is that we think that we have one mind. And he talks about the different parts of us having different thoughts and talking to them. So you obviously have got delved into this a little deeper, but I'm thinking for people who are watching and listening, we're talking about something that maybe isn't easy to grasp or understand if we don't go back to understanding what it means, where it's coming from.
Well, that's so valid and critical, I think, to understand here. And he addresses it well in the book. And even the heat he took as a very esteemed, high professional, successful 40-year professional therapist,
Mm-hmm.
primarily working in family systems models as an approach. And what he was doing in the external to get party A in a better relationship with party B. So wife in a better relationship with husband, or spouse in a better relationship with spouse, or mother in a better relationship with child, and vice versa, that he understood that what's out there in the external is mirroring to us an internal aspect of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that the work ultimately is going to be to work at the level of our internal family systems. So just like we have various parts and personalities and dynamics in our families and our marriages and our workplaces and coworkers, we also have a similar dynamic going on with the parts inside us. And he took a lot of heat for it because multiple personalities has been seen as neurosis, as psychosis, and other things, and certainly with stigma. Although he could hear the clients over this period of 40 years refer to the parts. A part of me wanted to go to Toronto, and a part of me was afraid to.
Mm.
A part of me wanted to take the trip to Anton, and a part of me couldn't get over that it was last minute.
Mhm.
So it's a very practical use of the terms. So the parts then are the aspects of us that have different approaches. One would be like wants to be a free spirit. Come on, let's just go. Throw caution to the wind. And the others serve more responsible, like firefighters or protectors, to go snap the hell out of it. What do you mean you're going to go at a last minute? What do you mean you're going to move to a new city with $40? Don't do it. Don't do it. So this kind of internal war with this that are very different, very similar to what we have in our families and in our marriages.
Mhm.
This is what's going on in our internal plane.
Mhm.
And so it's like letting those parts have their place and then going and speaking with those parts to get independently, just like we would do a friend if we were doing conflict resolution or crucial conversations or any of the modalities many of us have used for decades to apply those principles to our inner parts and let our parts have a crucial conversation. Let our parts have a redemption,
Mhm.
a forgiveness, grace, mercy, everything we want people to extend to us. We've not extended those to the exiled parts of ourselves. And it's very, very common, particularly us high righteous spiritual types, that we have denied these parts, disowned them, pretended they're not there, suppressed, depressed, disowned. So all of that kind of suppression, depression, disowning, denying activates. So instead of helping anything, it's caused them to grow bigger, to get more intense. So other and the course tells us it's not a matter of if you're going to do this, just when. And this parts work has been a bridge across some of this. I've been doing this in a similar fashion for decades through Hoffman processes and anger expression and body movement and expressing through the body through writing, journaling, 7-step processes, forgiveness, radical forgiveness, certainly differentiation, the work of Murray Bowen and Ed Friedman, and a failure of nerve. And those things, the work of Byron Katie is cognitive behavioral therapy, inquiry. And in that case, we were actually doing parts work then, and we just didn't have the languaging for it.
Right.
So I'd encourage people that are new to it to just either dive right in, like I usually do. And if that's not true, just to stick a toe in it to see, go watch a video or two and watch these therapists, which are trained therapists, lead people through this type of approach. And there's all sorts of free YouTube videos and trained therapists in IFS, internal family systems, IFS, which is the basis of this book, No Bad Parts. You can watch them and learn from them to have your own study and to do your own facilitation to some degree. And it's advised not to do your own self-facilitation for deep traumas and things like that you need a trained therapist of, and which I am not. I'm not licensed to do therapy. So I'm doing therapy with me, and I'm reading the book and listening and watching videos. And then I'm also enrolled. I have my own IFS therapist.
Okay. Interesting. So is there an IFS association that one can look for an IFS therapist?
Yes, right on the website. I don't have it in front of me, but it's got that. Maybe your producer can find that while we're talking. There's a website that's got all the licensed therapists listed and what state they're in. And most therapists, I understand, have to work within their state guidelines. So, for example, if I'm a resident of Kentucky, for example, then I've got to work with a Kentucky therapist. So there's some state line boundaries and all that.
Mhm.
The other YouTube videos that are done by therapists, though, are free, and they can watch and participate at whatever level they want to. And there's tons and tons of podcasts of people interviewing. The author of this book, No Bad Parts, is Richard Schwartz.
Thank you.
And thank you. Richard Schwartz is the author, and you can see him interviewed over and over and over, going over how this came about and the efficacy of it from a mental health perspective. And he will often take the podcast host, if they're willing, right into process. So
Wow.
instead of talking about the process, he actually takes them into a process.
Wow. That's quite
That's awesome.
Yeah. Something.
And Shay, welcome. Glad you're here today to check in. And it's nice to know that you know the IFS system. That's fantastic. So as we're journeying along, I think one of the things I've tried to do with my daughter is to share with her in a way that allows her to be the best version of herself that she can be without me trying to outline what that is. And it's, of course, caused me some pain on occasion as I let her find her way. But I think it's really paid off when I listen to the way she speaks. And it gives me a great hope for our future generations when I listen to some of the youth of today and how they're showing up differently than I showed up when I was a teenager, for example. There's less, I don't know, with her anyway and her friends, there's less apology for who she is and a greater sense of strength in I am who I am. And that gives me hope for the future when I think of the kids today.
It absolutely does me too. And it says a lot about you, and including your humility with what we want for them and our great devotional, sincere wanting for them not to suffer, for them not to have to take as many trips around the mulberry bush as we took or fall off the same black holes we did, and to accept that they are going to have their own suffering. And dang, it's hard to watch as a mother. And I just got an email on it this morning with somebody going, Martha, I know I shouldn't be sticking my nose in here, but my mother bear energy is triggered here, and watching my kid get bullied and things like that. And it's like, and she's not reaching out. She's not open. She's just not looking for advice. And one of the mothers this week told me her kid went like, could you just like back off here? You're not doing this right. You're actually not going to go there, right? So it's like letting the children lead, and I don't know how old your child is, honey, but they're not children.
No, she's 18 now, so
our parts are not up. Our little traumatized parts are frozen in that trauma scene of the whatever it was, 3 years old, 9 years old, 15 years old. So it's frozen in time, and to a degree, we're frozen in time. With they are still children, they're my babies, and you not cross them. And by the way, you go and be yourself, honey, as long as mama looks good.
So perfect.
Going and being yourself. Don't you do anything that's going to shame your mama after all I've done for you.
Isn't that the funniest thing, that we want our children to behave in a certain way so that we're not embarrassed?
Well, that's what it's all about, honey.
Of course it is.
Just why we want our parts to stay under control. We don't want rage to show up, or frustration to show up, or snarkiness to show up, because it pushes up against our personas.
It does. I was at a church service on Sunday. Don't often go to them in person because I'm always speaking online somewhere. And I was in person, and they started singing a song that I haven't heard for a long time. And it had me absolutely pouring buckets of tears down my face as I listened to this music. And there's a part of me trying to stop it. And then it's like, just let it go. You're feeling this deep connection with this music. Feel it, right? Like that's the part of us that I think, we're kind of working on, is to be with whatever is without feeling embarrassed, to just acknowledge it and welcome it and be with it.
which is antithetical to a lot of this. It's like
Mhm.
overcome shame, get rid of your guilt,
Mhm.
Yeah.
don't be
Just
anxious,
deal with it.
let go and let God. Let go and let God. It's like if I could let go and let God, I'd have done it a long
A long time ago.
ago. I'm going to have to do something else because as much as I want to let go, it's not let go of me yet.
Mhm.
So there's got to be something about that, honey, and to say it's time then to this new way with this is to say instead of trying to shun that or shut it up or manipulate it or control it, and it's to do the opposite, which
Opposite,
is to give it
absolutely.
space, swing wide the door,
Yep.
give it
Deal
some
with
room, do some deep, good listening, and for me, a great deal of apologizing, a great deal of regrets, a great deal of amend making,
it.
and a
Forgiveness.
great deal of I forgive me, please, forgive me, please, forgive me, please.
Yeah, it's interesting because as I was in this service, it was language that I don't often use because of, I don't, it just feels like separation in so many ways. And yet there's something about that deeply spiritual experience that I had when I had my original epiphany moment that was triggered again on Sunday. And that place of being willing to just go with it
Mhm.
was, it was a healing moment, but I've journaled about it since because it was so huge and trying to just let it be rather than letting it control me. But it's like, what do I believe? What do I believe about God? What do I believe about life? What do I, what speaks to me? So it was a powerful journey.
Well, that's really where the work is, honey.
Hmm.
Because it's like we are pretending we believe a lot of things that we don't actually believe.
Yeah.
It's true.
And then that's abandonment of our soul.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That the fear of abandonment and rejection, we are doing that to our own soul by pretending we believe something that we don't actually believe. And
Mhm.
then we've got these burdens, and this is referred to also in the text, no bad parts of these legacy burdens
Mhm.
and these burdens that's been handed down that include I'm supposed to care about that, and the truth is I don't.
I don't.
I don't. Not only do I not care about it, I can't even make myself care about it. I can't let it be known that I don't care.
Right.
I've
Yeah.
got to pretend that I care to keep up the face of the family,
Right.
The facade.
persona, the facade, honey, the persona of the legacy burden, which is one of the women said this morning in her session with me, like I couldn't let the neighbors know what's really going on in this house.
Mm.
'Cause
We were
on the
talking.
from the outside of this house looking in, it
Yeah,
looks like a very different something's going on in this house. But what's actually going on inside this house
Mhm.
it's
is the,
different.
is the house secrets.
Yeah, and how common is that, right? That's the
Constant.
sad
Yeah.
thing, is that is so common, and it is so many homes and so many families, people trying to be what they're not,
Yeah.
having those different faces in different situations,
And
right?
that's exactly what's going on in our house, honey, in
Mhm.
my house, that
Mhm.
I won't let people see my heartbrokenness or that
Right.
I'm in a deep grief
Mhm.
or that I'm feeling overwhelmed this week,
Mhm.
instead of
Mhm.
us like, how's it going? Oh, fine, fine,
Yeah.
fine, fine. Just,
Feelings inside not expressed.
yes,
That's a nicer way of saying it.
say, say it again,
Feelings inside not expressed.
which
Fine.
are the secrets of the insides.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Can't be expressed, can't be shown, don't let it be known.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Keep up the facade, wear the mask. And
Um,
all the while, it's a spiritual abandonment.
it
Yeah.
is. And the cause of all of our illnesses and poverty and broken relationships and on and on and on.
And basically, if we think about that, it all boils down to fear of something, right? Fear of people knowing who I really am. Like if you really knew me, you wouldn't love me the way you do, or fear of if you knew what my family was like, you would judge me, or it's all boils down to fear.
Yeah.
Well, and that even to be cautious there about making fear wrong. You know, and even teachings that go, it's either fear or love. You choose fear or love. You choose. It's like, well, if I could choose, I wouldn't have any fear. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah,
So there's situations I can choose. Situationally, I can choose. And I'm not going to eradicate fear in me until I go to these parts that are so afraid, and let the parts of me that are now in place, very strongly in place, to protect me from ever feeling like that I felt back there. The protectors are in place to make sure I don't have to feel all that intense abandonment, rejection, fear, not good enough, unworthy, don't deserve, I'm not safe here, I have no value here, I have no power here. The protector parts are in place to make dang sure that I don't have to feel all that again. So that's got to be sorted out too, eventually, that the protectors are here doing their job. And as much as it looks like, which will even look like an inner critic, you know, it'll call us names and shame us because we had a certain stance on something. But it's like that kind of protector is still in place. It's also fear-based.
Right.
It's afraid. It's not going to be able to stop us from going into those deep, intense feelings again either.
And that's a good reminder. It's a good reminder that we have to have those inner conversations with ourselves. We have to go in depth into the parts, having those feelings and acknowledging them in order to, I suppose, transform them.
Absolutely, honey. Just like we would a relationship. If you and I had a disagreement or hurt feelings between us, they're not going to be dealt with by avoiding them.
Right.
And either we're avoidant of them or we've worked at numbing them, trying to pretend they're not there, instead of like, it's still there. And the more I avoid it and pretend it's not there, usually the more intense and the bigger it gets.
Right.
What you resist persists.
And then some.
And then some. Well, we're at about the halfway mark here, so we're going to take a little commercial break, and we'll be right back. You're watching Spirit Cafe Show. Our wonderful guest is the Reverend Dr. Martha Creek, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. You're watching the New Thought Media Network.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
And we're back. And Martha, you were just in the process of saying something as we zipped off to commercial break. So let's come back to you.
No telling what it was, honey. What I remember thinking about coming into the time, and what I would hope would be people's takeaway from our conversation here, and just really bowing to you, Barbara and Cheryl, for taking people, offering them tools, practical ways of being with themselves, ourselves as a whole self, hopefully less disintegrated. So this work is about an integration of ourselves, and it's complex in that much of our wounding occurred prior to sometimes even our acquisition of language.
Yeah.
And that and it's not able to be healed. These parts are not able to be healed through our questioning and our reorganization of our belief systems, our BS. So in other words, we cannot think our way out of these hurts, think our way out of trauma. So when our capacity to process this unbearable, what was unbearable for kids, terror, panic, shame, rage, overwhelm, all of these undigested, incomprehensible pieces of experiences are held subconsciously, subcortexually, subcellularly, unreachable places. And we know this. Science has told us this. And it's from alchemically through and into our bodies. So the encouragement then, I've done and what I've witnessed people do is just get over it. Just get over it. It's irrational. Can't really believe that. True. There's no monster under your bed. And so on and so on and so on, that what we experienced is in turn internalized then. So this is in our nervous system. My coach, even before I was in IFS, used to say, you realize, Martha, you're dealing with things that are in your bones and blood. This also speaks to what we've internalized. It also speaks to what is in our lineage, our legacy burdens, our generation to generation, the sins of the father, whatever you want to call it. That includes all sorts of aggressions and unquestioned beliefs and convictions that are not ours, that were our family's convictions in some case, but are not ours. And the way we've treated ourselves innocently is like an automatic form of gaslighting ourselves to reflect deep misunderstanding of the hurt and how hurtful it was. And that only contributes to keep this persistent, as you said, Barbara. The more I try to deny this, the more persistent it gets.
Absolutely.
And then in addition to this, in some cases, unbearable, unendurable burdening that we've carried, most of us, for our lifetime, which is painful and terrifying enough, profound sense of aloneness that goes with this. And you referred to it, Cheryl, as I can't let anybody know this. The sense that no one could possibly understand this. That there's no companionship in my darkness or in my dark night of the soul. I'm alone in this, which is further devastating to the soul, further rejecting that soul, further abandoning the soul. So eventually then when that raging hurt little girl or little boy in us cries out to be known, to be felt, to be heard, to be remembered, and peeks its head out like, is there anybody here? Is it safe now? What about me? I've been waiting here 60 years for a companion, for a friend. How about now? And then as it sticks its head out, it's like grow yourself up. Don't whine. Don't be a pouter. Don't be a slacker. We're not 3 anymore. And I had a therapist to ask me once, like, Martha, how long are you going to let your little 3-year-old run your show? So now I understand that that's the way she would have spoken to herself.
Yeah.
She would speak to me in the same way she's speaking to her own parts.
Right.
But at the time I thought, oh yeah, let me get a hold of this. I can't have my 3-year-old running the show. Versus my 3-year-old's going to run the show until I go meet that 3-year-old with some understanding.
Right.
And see that what that 3, in this case 3 or 6 years, whatever age we are, that it's yearning for something else. That it's yearning to meet me, to be met with some compassion, some clarity, some connectedness, with some heart.
Yeah. I'm looking at the book, and what you're talking about, he's got an exercise in here, which I think you are referring to, is accessing the self through unblending. So we've blended all these experiences, all the traumas together, and we have our own thinking. Some of us, I don't think we're even aware of it, because it's so suppressed, right?
Most of it's unconscious, honey.
Yeah, it's so unconscious. So it's like having to tease it out and separate these parts in order to recognize them even.
Yes, and that they're yearning for this. And then so the feelings of deep sadness, overwhelm, rage, even whatever the emotion, is all a call for love. It's a call for attention. It's a call to feel safe, powerful, valuable, all the things that we didn't get when the trauma went into place. And that we will eventually then stop abandoning them, shaming them, guilting them, and do our utmost best, which is my new commitment with devotion. And I encourage people, if you're not actually going to do this, not say you're going to do it, because that will provide more abandonment. If I say, for example, in my personal life, I'm going to connect with my parts at minimally twice a day at least, before I get out of the bed and before I close my eyes. I'm going to check in with my parts and do some holding of them. And that comes from reading something by a man named Licata, Licata. He wrote, in this way, the parts don't even want or need to be healed. They simply need to be held.
Wow, I love that.
And there's every one of us can do that. There's not one of us here listening that can't do a little holding, some holding of our left behind, fragmented, disintegrated parts in one way or another, through our minds, through our rituals, through our actions, through our prayers, through our Ho'oponopono, or whatever it is. I see you. I'm sorry. I'm sincerely sorry.
Yeah.
Forgive me. Forgive me. And I love you. So something as any kind of ritual, prayer, or anything we can offer can go a very long way here.
Well, I remember years ago doing some inner child work, in just trying to get to a place of allowing myself to be. I remember when I would start to cry, there was this huge fear that it would never stop. And getting past that, and my eldest daughter had bought me a teddy bear, so I would hold it and hug it, and I named it Barbie because that's what I was called when I was little. And I would just tell Barbie as I rocked her and as I bawled my eyes out, I love you, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, I will always be here. And it was a great practice. But I would lock myself in my room so my kids didn't have to hear me wailing, because I would let it go. She was hurting and needed that. And I still find times where I need to do that, where I need to just be with me.
God bless you for it too, Barbara. And I think as long as we're alive, that's going to be the case. That so many want to do this as a tick box exercise.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't have any of this. The very first call this morning, this woman got to a place of fear of abandonment. She is in her 70s. And she said, I don't have abandonment issues. And it's like, this is what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how far exiled it is.
Yeah.
Disowned, denied. And then I don't identify as somebody with abandonment issues,
Mhm.
although I'm abandoned over and over and over again. So they're putting their little heads out here and there to see. And, you know, I also want to uplift. Thank you, Shay and Barbara. I cry routinely.
Yeah.
And I've taken quite a bit of heat for it. You know,
Mhm.
they've been called unprofessional and out of control and all sorts of things. And
What's in your consciousness?
I'm not willing to let that stop me. So when tears rise now, tears arise, they express, they pass, and they're absolutely welcome here.
Mhm.
Yes.
So I recommend doing all the crying you can. And I always say, if we were really listening, if we were really in presence, we'd all just be crying, I think.
Mhm. It's interesting. I had an experience a couple of weeks ago that I hadn't actually really experienced before. My son got married, which was wonderful. We had a wonderful wedding and it was just so beautiful. But because of that, I had family visiting from overseas, which again was wonderful. And I was sitting outside on the deck with my sister and her wife. And we were just talking, and she was talking. She had stayed with my son for a while, and she said something about, you know, does he know some of your life story? And I said, probably not. Like, who talks about that kind of thing? And I don't even know if he's interested, right? Because he's my son that's very, you know, like, you know, what's it to you? You know, you'll need to know when you need to know what you need to know. But anyway, I love him dearly. And she started talking, and because we were talking about the different memories we have and the different experiences we had as children. And I went to boarding school and they didn't. And, you know, there were things that I experienced differently. And we were talking about that, and she didn't even know that. And while we were talking, I started crying. But you know, it was the first time that I felt, and I said to her, I'm crying for the little girl that experienced that. And I actually felt that. I felt like I was seeing that little girl and feeling her pain and crying for her. And I've never experienced that before.
Well, this is what this work, honey, that's an example of where this work can take us.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm going to be with that little girl differently now.
Mm-hmm.
And I got into something similar. I was in an event not too long ago, and as I pulled up to park, there was people out parking me, and they were drunk. And I had a very big reaction. Now, I don't know them. I have never met them and likely won't ever see them again. But I had a big reaction to this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, this is an aspect of myself that's ready to be met again. With all of that drunkenness
Mm-hmm.
that I experienced and the way I tried to rationalize. Now, you know, if you drink just this much, it won't ever be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So try not to go over this much.
Mm-hmm.
Or now Thursday will be Christmas Day, so everybody will be together. So try not to just drink every day this week, but just do your best, and please promise me, do we have an agreement that you won't drink on Christmas Day because it causes so much confusion and madness.
Mm-hmm.
So that little girl in me that was trying to use rationale and logic and all of that, that's never been met. That's also not been met about what torture it was to watch all that.
Mm-hmm.
And how even a stranger in that shape was the mirror to that for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To say that that little part that was so feeling so responsible.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said on many of these interviews and shows like this, honey, that I have a clear memory, a very distinct defining memory of looking around when I was 3 years old,
Mm-hmm.
going, oh hell, I'm the oldest one here.
Wow.
And then taking that on.
Right.
So an innocent little child that didn't know, no, actually, you're not responsible. You're only 3. And then not being able to comprehend that.
Mhm.
I went straight into, I've got to be the responsible one. I've got to want to do the math. I've got to be one to teach them. If you spend more than we take in, we'll be in debt. Like I'm the one that had to take the responsibility for that. And that little girl was never met with, you're just a child.
Right.
You actually don't have to take on the
Yeah.
responsibility for this.
It's not yours to carry.
No. And then the book talks about unblending from that. It also talks about unburdening that. So like I've got to go back to that part, and I work with it regularly, and I'm really working with it since that last experience to unburden it, to not only unblend, to let that little girl see what I'm actually responsible for and what we're not actually responsible for, including people's lives and their functioning and their habits and their patterns and their ways of being. And that I can also see that is a trauma response in her.
Right.
That the fact that is still affecting us 60 years later.
Yeah, exactly.
Is an evidence of that we're in a trauma response to that. And that's okay too.
Yeah. I think
that's understandable.
I think one of the key things I'm wanting people here to understand and think about, because this is about having difficult conversations, right? And saying things that we don't always talk about, which are important. But one of the key things that came out for me with that experience is, I don't know, for me, it's like, I don't know where that came from. I thought that I was fine. I thought, that I dealt with it, right? And so I think it's important for us and me, myself, talking about myself, to understand that there is so much there that needs to be healed. That even though I come across as, I don't know what I come across with, but happy and strong, exactly. And all those things really behind that mask, there's a lot of pain and suffering that needs to be acknowledged and healed. And I don't even know what that is.
Well, I hope your producer caught that, honey, because that can be the summary statement of this show. That regardless of how dang happy and positive and generous and fun-loving we are, it also includes pain and suffering and trauma and regrets and remorse and feelings of unworthiness and powerlessness and everything else under the sun, and that it's both and, not one or the other, but it's both and.
Both and is so important.
And that is our wholeness. Our wholeness is not my positive, happy. My wholeness is the depth of grief and despair and the depths of bliss and joy. And it's both and.
Right.
And that's living, right? Like we came into this experience to live, not to, be in meditation for the entire time, but to actually live.
We came into this experience to suffer.
Yeah. It's absolutely true, honey. And the fact that we have disowned suffering, and we live under a false conviction that there shouldn't be any. There shouldn't be suffering. And it's like that belief, that one belief that there shouldn't be suffering causes more suffering.
What causes suffering? Yeah,
exactly. That I accept that there'll be suffering at times. There's going to be times of suffering, situational suffering. And my not accepting the suffering is causing more suffering.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's well said.
That's, my not accepting the suffering is causing more suffering.
Yeah.
And you want to keep going?
Yeah.
And that the fact that I won't let my children suffer causes more suffering.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes.
And the fact that I teach there shouldn't be any suffering causes more suffering.
Yeah.
And for me, the fact that not only then part of my maturing, emotional maturing and spiritual maturing was that I have to accept the pain in human beings, accept that part of the human processing and human learning processes includes pain and suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I built some integration in that. And then the next step and next level of that for me is I, Martha Creek, have got to be willing for them to keep their suffering.
Yes.
They may not ever meet it. They may not ever do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see that now more compassionately, that it's taken me 60 years for some of it. So I may never witness them meeting their suffering, not suffering, honey.
Yeah.
So I've got to be willing for them to have suffering and to keep their suffering and to go all the way to the grave with the suffering.
And that's, I think, one of our great challenges. We notice in groups, the minute somebody starts crying, we want to immediately go, oh, it's okay, you know, and stop it. And that is really disrespectful to the process that the person needs to experience, right? We need to allow those tears.
It really is, Barbara. And I've had some awakening around that, because I was likely that not too long ago, but over time, and I had somebody in a very intense situation out there at the 9-day school for the work, actually, and standing up on a microphone in front of 300 people, very vulnerable, sharing. And the staff come, 2 or 3 of us helpers, and it wasn't me in this case, but it's just a miracle it wasn't me, come running up to her with boxes of Kleenex.
Yeah.
And she stopped what she was saying and said, and could you stop your staff from hitting me over the head with Kleenex?
Yeah. Let me be here.
Let me, give me some space for this, because that little part that was told not to cry, or you shouldn't cry, or shame for crying, or whatever it was doing its best to get some breathing space.
Right.
And even a message like, let me hug you, or here's your Kleenex, or whatever else. The message often just do whatever you've got to do to dry this up. Get a hold of yourself. Don't.
Yeah, it ruins the moment for the person who's in the midst of their experience. And I remember my daughter, when she was in grade 4, my youngest daughter, I got a call. You know, she came home from school really upset, and I was trying to figure out what was wrong. And she said, well, I cried in class for this, that, or the other reason. And the teacher's assistant took her aside and said, you can't do that because you'll upset the other children. So I went in and talked to the principal and said, you can't tell my child that. That's not okay.
Yeah.
You know, that she gets to cry if she wants to.
Yeah.
And if somebody else takes it personal, well, that's their, you know, that's their process, whatever that is. But my eldest daughter taught me a great lesson when she was 19. I was on the phone with her, and we were talking about what she could do with her life, and she hung up on me. That was a real clear indicator. Mom, shut up.
She can let you know what she's going to do with her life. Yeah.
Exactly.
The fact that you can laugh about that, though, honestly, is a miracle.
It's taken me a few years.
And
this is her 5th marriage, and her is it your 4th child or fourth child? And the 4th one, she really got right eventually.
The first one is 50 years old, and the youngest one is 18 years old. So,
well, what's most inspiring about it, honey, is your clear understanding that regardless of what age we are, or how many children we've bared, or how many marriages we've had, we're still a student.
Absolutely, forever.
Yeah. And really the wisdom that it's brought, Barbara, from those experiences, right, is what's the word? I want to say you can't pay for that. It's it really is.
Beautiful life lessons.
Yeah, absolutely.
Priceless came to mind. Yeah.
Priceless. Thank you. That was the word I was thinking of, but I couldn't get it out. But thank you, Martha.
You go to hell and back, and it's
Yeah.
amazing the
Yeah.
blessings that come with
Well,
it.
that's the way we learn. That's human nature, right?
It is. It is.
Yeah. And thank you, Shay. Thank you for your comments and
Yes.
sharing your thoughts. And Shay just said, no spiritual bypassing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of us do when we don't want to do the work and we don't want to go to that depth of feeling and working through it.
I think so. I also would caution a little bit because now it's becoming a keyword.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spiritual bypassing and what it is and all that. And
I
don't
don't even know what that means, really.
don't spiritual bypass. Well, it's described as a way of hiding behind spirituality
Mm-hmm.
and spiritual practices to prevent us from acknowledging what we're actually feeling. That's the literal definition of it. And it's important, I think, for me to be sure I'm not doing that or that I do that less,
Mm-hmm.
and then to accept that at times I will still do that.
Right.
Mhm.
Not feeling safe or empowered or valuable, or that there's not a place here for my feelings or something, that I'll absolutely pretend I'm fine,
Mm-hmm.
though I'm not fine, and that I've got to include that too.
Right.
That there'll be some times of that, even though I don't prefer that. I
Right.
can't. One of the ministers this week said, I can't do my therapy through my Sunday sermons. So I don't need to be up in my Sunday sermons trying to do all of my therapeutic neurosis work.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Toxic
and
positivity. I like that. Yeah. All is well. Really?
All is well. Well, we're down to our last 3 minutes.
Oh.
I know the time goes by so fast. Martha, what is the one thing you would like people to take away from this conversation today? One final thought.
there's no bad parts.
I love that.
And not to believe me, but to see just how true that is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think our emotions are kind of key to whatever whatever's really happening for us below the surface. So if we pay attention to that, that leads us forward in ways that can be very healing if we will just honor it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Go ahead, Martha.
compassion, a compassionate, to offer the compassion to ourselves that we've always wanted someone to offer to us.
Oh, and it looks like Martha has a new book out, Presence and Potential.
It'll be about a week, and it's another one, Cheryl, where somebody said, write a book, and I said, you write a book. So this is really a transcription of me presenting some of these tenets of how to be differentiated.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's
I
great.
love that. What a
Yeah.
great title.
Yeah. And for me, in closing, I love, Martha, you're always saying, this and that, both and,
Awesome.
right? Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. And to be okay with that and not to be so hard on ourselves and so judgmental. And I what I want to leave people with is do the work. Do the work. If you want to get somewhere, you got to dig and you got to go into that pile.
Life is a journey without a destination. So do the work moment by moment. Well, we're down to our last couple of seconds here. Thank you for watching Spirit Cafe Show. Thank you.
Thank you, Shay, for being here with us.
Thank you, Shay. Thank you, Deja. Thank you, Martha. Oh, you're such a treat. This has been wonderful. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank
so
you,
nice
Barbara.
to be together
I
in the same
know.
space. And have a most wonderful week, everybody. Know that you're loved and appreciated. And we'll be back again next week. Same time, same channel.
And thank you, everyone, for watching. See you next week. Bye.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network. Come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.